Welcome to BW Healthcare World. Now, today we are going to talk about health insurance and the industry at large. We'll be talking about health insurance penetration in the country, how was 2022 in terms of the growth economically of the health insurance industry, and how will the upcoming financial year 2023 will pan out for the industry. We'll also be talking about the surging inflation of the healthcare industry and other topics which are related to the industry. For that, we have one of the stalwarts of a health insurance industry, Mr. Krishnan Ramachandran, MD and CEO of Niva Bupa Health Insurance. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Krishnan. Pleasure to have you on the channel.
Thank you, Shivam, for the opportunity. Pleasure to be here as well.
Mr. Krishnan, I want to start off the conversation and I want to understand how the last couple of years have fared for the health insurance industry in terms of economic growth, and specifically, how do you think 2022 was?
The last 2 years have been simultaneously the most challenging and exciting for the health insurance industry, Shivam. I've been associated with the health insurance industry in India from 2007, and I must confess that the last 2 years have been unlike anything that I have seen. They have been challenging for obvious reasons. COVID and 2022 specifically also started off with the threat of Omicron, and interestingly, as we bring a close to 2022, we do have a threat of another wave of COVID. Hopefully it will not come to pass. But it's also been a very, very exciting year for the health insurance industry and my company Niva Bupa specifically. It's been exciting because of the fact that I do think there's been a permanent shift in awareness of the need for this product. Insurance, many parts of insurance have been about a push, but the one that I think is increasingly consumer driven and is pull is health insurance. So we've seen that trajectory play out, more so for health insurance and certainly for the company. It's also been a year where the industry has seen unprecedented growth. As an example, and 2022 straddles 2 financial years, but in FY22, we actually grew 60% as a company. And this year, on the back of a 60% growth, it does look like that we will grow 45% as a company. So in that sense, it's been very, very exciting. It's also the year where health insurance firmly entrenched itself as the largest growing segment in non-life and the largest in terms of growth as well as in terms of size. So in terms of size, it is 35, 36, 37% of the whole non-life industry, and it continues to be the fastest growing segment. So lots of challenges on account of COVID, claims, taking care of claimants, but equally lots of opportunities and excitement for the industry and for us as a company.
How do you think 2023 will look like when we see growth in the industry? And also, we've had these tremors of recession, and experts are predicting that it'll be tough year in terms of industry growth. So will we see that effect on insurance industry as well?
Sure. Let me answer to healthcare specifically, healthcare insurance. Healthcare globally is known to be a recession-proof industry because people fall sick and need care all the time, and health insurance is an adjunct industry to healthcare. So in that sense, in terms of growth, I do personally think that we will continue to see high growth rates in the health insurance industry. And many of the trends that were accelerated by COVID, I think will be sustained specifically in the health insurance industry and in the context of Niva Bupa. And I'll outline some of those secular trends, right? One is the trend around awareness. I think permanency around awareness and shifts in consumer demand for health insurance are getting more and more established. That's number one. Number two is the trend around embracing technology. Whether it's technology to do with the people working in insurance companies. For example, we have permanently moved to a hybrid method of working as an insurance company. Technology to do with distribution or servicing I think more and more as Niva Bupa, we continue to embrace and drive use of digital technology. So today, as an example, claims, which is by far the most complex aspect to technology usage in the healthcare, health insurance industry, we expect that by the time we close this year, more than 15% of our claims will be auto-adjudicated, which means without human touch. And this is great for customer experience because it eliminates the friction and the waiting and the anxiety and the associated anxiety. Today, we are in a position to service more than 60% of our policy holders entirely digitally. Today, more than 50% of our policies get issued with zero human touch entirely digitally. More than 85% get renewed without human touch entirely digitally. Right? So I think the secular trend around technology adoption will continue as we move ahead. The other one that I'd like to point out is, given the increasing awareness, there's more and more approaches that we have taken to be segment specific in terms of our product and proposition to customers. As a case in point, we launched a product targeted at hypertensives and diabetics called Smart Health Plus. We launched a product with outpatient cover. Both of these were in partnership with the Apollo Hospitals Group, a well-known, well-regarded brand on the healthcare side. So I think product innovation, more and more targeted at specific segments, specific audiences is something that played out for us as a company, and I think will be a secular trend moving forward as we look ahead.
Right. So awareness, the digital future already here, and product specific products for the the segments. Right. So let me come to my next question, which is, you were at at a conference recently, and you were talking about the missing middle and how it's a concern, and it's continuing to be a concern. So how do you think we can actually find the missing middle?
So the missing middle exists. It is not yet into the fold of private health insurance, and is not yet taken care of by government, so to speak, right? And estimates vary, but Niti Aayog report suggests that could be as large as 300 million Indians. And I think 4 things need to be done at a country level to find the missing middle, to your point, right? And it all comes from doing things that will be in general good for health insurance penetration in our country. First is to carry on what COVID has done for us around awareness. I think this segment is still not aware in the sense of willingness to pay risk premium for protection, right? So the Indian mentality is, look, I'm paying money, I should get something back.
Yeah.
But insurance is about paying for risk and frankly, you're better off if you don't get anything back, right? So spreading awareness in this sense, I think, is going to be important to find this missing middle segment. Second is affordability. I think on the private side, we do need to come up with products that are more affordable to this segment, and I think there is a big opportunity for us to do it specifically for these 300 million Indians. Third is assurance. I still think, in spite of the enormous good work the health insurance industry does, our perception is more framed by the few claims that get rejected as opposed to the vast majority of claims that get paid. As an example, the industry settled 26,000 crores worth of claims on account of COVID. How much of this is known by the public in the country? How much of this has been captured by media? I think the negative stories get captured, but I think there's an enormous body of positive work that the insurance industry has done, and it's important for the country's sake to get that out, because that's how trust builds. And this missing middle is at a point where they still perhaps don't trust that health insurance will work for them when it needs to, and I think the answer is it does, and we need to get this story out. So getting the story out is part of what I call building assurance that this industry works. I think the other aspect to building assurance is to have more standards in healthcare. Healthcare is an industry where it's a state subject. there's insufficient transparency, there's lack of standards, and a lot of time, the absence of standards results in unnecessary friction, in my opinion, between health insurance and healthcare, and the customer or the patient is caught in the middle. So having standards again is very important as a trust building exercise, and this can happen only with government and policy support. Having said that, I think the insurance regulator has taken a number of very, very positive steps, very excited about it, to make sure that there's more and more assurance around the industry. And the last one, which is the fourth A, is about access. To your point, this directly speaks to how do we find this missing middle, and I think while we have a massive access as an industry, especially through banks, taken together, for example, as a company, we have access to distribute through more than 40,000 bank branches, but getting banks to distribute more, getting other methods of distribution, for example, Bima Sugam, which the regulator has proposed, the Bima Vahaks, I think access in general, so that we are able to get these products to these customers, I think is the last element that needs to be solved for the missing.
So while we're on the subject of trust, there is a trust deficit that exists between health insurance companies and other healthcare segments. And why do you think this exists in the first place, and how do you think we can minimize it or even kind of exclude it?
I think trust between hospitals and insurers can come from sunlight. The best medicine to build trust, in my mind, is sunlight, and what I mean by sunlight is dramatically higher levels of transparency between both of us, right? So today, for example, on tariffs, it's important to have transparency around and certainty from a customer standpoint. Look, if I'm going to go and get treated in hospital ABC, what is likely my cost outgo? In many situations, customers and we don't necessarily have a fix on that, right? So transparency around costs. Second is, medicine is art and science. So let's bring more science into medicine, specifically when it comes to protocols. And here I think the healthcare industry must submit itself to say that, look, if it's, for example, COVID, this is the protocol for treatment, these are the care pathways, and this is what we're going to follow. So then there's a basis for dialogue between hospitals and us. Today that basis does not exist for most part. Other example being, for example, WHO has standards around dengue. When should you get admitted? What are the conditions, for example, platelet count, fever, etc., for admission? We find that many hospitals don't submit themselves to these protocols, right? So I think the second aspect to improving trust between hospitals and insurers is to have more transparency and practice of evidence-based medicine, protocols, and so on and so forth. And the last one I'll point out to is technology. I think from our side, we're very committed to using technology as an industry. We need the hospital industry to reciprocate. I do know that in time they will, but this is the last element to building trust between the two of us. And lastly, I will say, as with, there's only 25 companies in the insurance side that practice insurance. There's maybe 40,000 hospitals that in the country. Fraud and abuse is a problem that I think needs to be solved more on the provider side than on the insurance side. So I think there are bad actors, and those bad actors unfortunately shape the perception of the healthcare industry. So those bad actors need to be tackled. Given that healthcare is state subject, I think the influential actors within healthcare do need to address both fraud and, equally importantly, abuse within the healthcare system.
Another burning kind of discussion which is going around right now is the medical inflation, which is on the rooftops in India. We have the highest medical inflation in Southeast Asia region, which is close to 14% right now. So how do you think that we can possibly kind of control it or drive it down?
Absolutely right, medical inflation is a challenge, and I'll address this from two fronts. One is, as I stated, one of the things for health insurance to increase from a penetration standpoint is affordability. And affordability in our industry has to come from the value chain, which means that premiums are, and it's important for everybody seeing this to understand that, look, premiums can be affordable only when healthcare itself is affordable. So we can't have a situation where healthcare gets more and more expensive and you expect premiums to stay low, right? That will not work beyond a point. So I think it's very important that healthcare becomes affordable. While healthcare in India is certainly affordable when you look at it in the context of the world, I think there are aspects where we could do more to increase affordability just by bringing in more efficiency and effectiveness into the healthcare system. As an example, if I take my own company's example, inflation, or if I look at absolute increase in average claim size pre-COVID to where we are today, that increase has actually been in excess of 35-40% over this 24 to 30 month period, right? So in that sense, there has been a shift in average claim sizes and cost of treatment that the healthcare industry has affected, and many companies are therefore have increased or will be increasing health premiums. So the important point I want to make is inflation is important because it impacts affordability, certainly on premiums, but more generally across the healthcare system. I think the second aspect around inflation that I want to make is going back to the point that I made on transparency. Today, nobody knows what is healthcare inflation in our country, right? So I think the consumer, the basket does capture healthcare. There is a healthcare index, but it does not sufficiently capture the pattern of consumption that exists today. So I think we need to bring about a transparent healthcare index for the country. And only then can we start to benchmark, what is healthcare inflation running at, and therefore how should it relate to health insurance. And this is very important for all consumers to understand. This is how costs are going up. Today we know the costs from a general inflation standpoint, but we don't have a good answer as to what is healthcare inflation in our country today. And I think policymakers, regulators and the industry, including health insurance and healthcare, need to first, in a transparent way, build out this healthcare inflation index, Shivam.
Coming to affordability again, we've talked about throughout this conversation. When we talk about affordability, health insurance is an answer in many ways. We talk about OPD, services being included in the insurance, and also the home health care which has come up recently, and robotic surgeries. Let's say that. What are the check boxes for health insurance companies to include these services in an standard umbrella policy?
I think to your point on affordability and bringing on board more services, in my mind a critical aspect is the GST. I think one of the single most important reasons why outpatient products have not been launched at scale in our country is the fact that we have 18% GST on insurance and healthcare is GST exempt. So when I go out there to build an outpatient product, I'm straight away working against 18%, right? So it's been hard for all of us to build a good customer value proposition on outpatient and the services that you referred to because of the 18% GST. So I think it's an important ask. It has been an important ask from us that we should bring this 18% GST down so that we're able to make health insurance affordable in general, but specifically that we're able to cover more and more of the services that you described under health insurance. I think that's one very important aspect. The second important, for many of these outpatient services, it is high frequency but low value in terms of transactions. Currently today with technology being what it is, with healthcare being as fragmented as it is, and with technology adoption in general in healthcare being relatively lower, I think it's extremely important for us to have underlying technology in order to deal with high frequency low value transactions in a way that is administratively efficient, right? So we do need work around technology for us to be able to meaningfully offer the range of outpatient services that you refer to. And the last one again is standards, right? Standards for data capture. So one is to have the technology, the other is to make sure that the technology is able to make things work seamlessly. So standards for data capture, standards for data exchange, all of these need to fall in place if we have to meaningfully start to offer value proposition to customers, specifically around outpatient, around home health care services, maybe even around dental, pharmacy, and so on and so forth.
Right. Talking about again affordability, you recently in a conference again talked about the reforms in how compensation works in healthcare and financing. So can you tell us how is it currently functioning, and where do the faults lie according to you, and how can we fix it?
No, I think the other very, very important reform that needs to happen between healthcare and health insurance is on payment systems, or compensation, to use your language, Shivam. Today, predominantly, the way payments work in India is similar to how it works in some other markets, which is we work on a fee-for-service basis, which in my opinion, economically distorts incentives, which means that, from a healthcare actor standpoint, the more you treat, the more you get paid, right? Which is, in my mind, fundamentally economically distorting. I think this needs to move to alternate arrangements. Alternate arrangements could be, for example, payment for episode, where there is a certain level of risk. So, as an example, if somebody is down with a heart problem, let's say, the insurance company pays for the entire cycle of treatment as opposed to one leg of the treatment, right? So, somebody is down with heart disease, requires a procedure and requires follow-on care, right? So, I think one way to pay is for the episode, which is the whole treatment cycle of what the patient is going through. Then there's an incentive on the provider to optimize and make sure that there is a care pathway, and cost is a consideration in a positive way in the whole treatment pathway, right? So that's one example of how payments could work, which is less distorting from an economic incentive standpoint. The other one is managed care, right, which is I take on a consumer and manage care over a portion of lifetime, not just inpatient but outpatient care as well, so that there is continuity or continuum of care. The whole objective is look better patient outcomes but at more affordable prices. So I think payment system reform and including some level of risk sharing between insurer and provider is critical if we have to manage costs as healthcare consumption goes up into the future.
For you what are the plans of Niva Bupa for 2023?
I think our plans will be to continue what we've been executing on as a company, which is to continue to drive a growth agenda. So we will continue to drive distribution expansion with a lot of the positive regulatory reforms that have been brought out, specifically around open architecture. We're very excited that we could add more distribution strength to us as a company. Our plan is to introduce more exciting, innovative products for customer segments. Our plan is to continue to push the envelope on digitization as a company with the objective of improving customer experience and becoming more efficient as a company. And our plan is to continue to be a great place to work as we move along this journey.
Right. Right. I think we are moving in the right direction in the health insurance sector. In 2023, there is going to be tremendous growth, as Mr. Krishnan already mentioned. We are going to see increasing penetration happening, technological advancement kind of helping in that, and also there's a greater need of transparency in the insurance sector and the healthcare sector at large. Thank you for giving us time, Mr. Krishnan. It was a pleasure interviewing you. Thank you.
Likewise, Shivam, absolutely a pleasure. Thank you, and a Happy New Year to you and the team at Business World.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.